Will a Canadian NHL team ever win a Stanley Cup again? That's the question. Let's talk about it. The question is, will a Canadian NHL team ever win a Stanley Cup again? Well, did you know that there's only an 18.75% chance that a Canadian team will win the Stanley Cup in any given year? It's been nearly 3 decades since a Canadian team has won the Stanley Cup. The last Canadian franchise to win was the Montreal Canadiens in 1983 against the LA Kings. Let's look at some quick math. There are 7 Canadian NHL teams, which is around 21.88% of the league. Now, factor in how many Canadian NHL teams make the playoffs on an average year. And you're left with approximately 3 teams out of 7, sometimes more, sometimes less. Only 16 teams out of the 32 even get a chance to win the Stanley Cup, which equals about 18.75% Canadian teams' chances at this point. And this is all before factoring in how good the West versus the East is and the teams these 3 Canadian franchises will have to get through to get to the final. Don't forget, there might be a scenario where 2 Canadian teams have to play each other in the playoffs, therefore eliminating even more of a chance to bring the cup back to Canada. On top of all of this, you have to factor in the stage of development of each of these 7 teams, their ownership's patience in developing players, and again, their willingness to spend money. Did I mention only 1 team can even win the cup? You also have to take into account provincial and federal taxes in Canada, which are much higher than places like Florida or even Texas. Another point everyone forgets are the number of players who have some or even all Canadian teams on their no trade clause. And that be for like taxes or tax implications, even media pressure, among other reasons. You can do everything right and still not win due to other factors such as injuries, officiating, a bad bounce or a bad play, running into a hot goalie, or even puck luck, and any other unforeseen factors. Adding expansion teams in the U.S., like we've seen just recently in the last couple of years with Vegas and now Seattle, and moving Canadian franchises like we saw with the Winnipeg Jets 1.0 and Quebec Nordiques, that again dilutes the chances of a Canadian team winning the Stanley Cup even more. At the end of the day, it's not as easy as you think. Overall, everything is against you as a team. And this is why the Stanley Cup is the hardest trophy in sports to win, especially if you're a Canadian franchise.